In my last few videos, I've made several small references to the Four Pillars and the current state of that group of professional wrestlers on the AEW roster. Several times I have referred to the fact that only one of the Four Pillars is truly fulfilling his potential at the moment, and when I look back at what the Four Pillars were and how they were viewed by the public, it makes me realize that a majority of professional wrestling fans were probably wrong about what their role in the company would be. So I thought, to celebrate the 1-year anniversary since my very first video on this channel, which was about the Four Pillars, I would take a look at how they've developed and how my opinions on them have changed. I feel like from the very beginning, anyone who heard about the Four Pillars purely from AEW television assumed that the company saw them as their 4 best homegrown wrestlers in the company. The expectation or belief was that these were 4 finished articles who were ready to take on AEW without any issue. In reality, this couldn't have been further from the truth, and anybody who knew about the Four Pillars before either MJF or CM Punk uttered the words realized what the 4 pillars of AEW really were. I go into detail in my very first video about the significance of the name 4 Pillars and where that terminology has been used before in professional wrestling. Essentially, I boil down the 4 pillars as 4 professional wrestlers who are homegrown young talents who will be with the company long term. The 4 wrestlers that the company will be built around for the next 10 to 20 years. They won't necessarily always be the best wrestlers in the company, they won't always hold all the gold, and they don't need to. They are just the glue the company is held around. You may be laughing at me right now saying, well, MJF has openly expressed his interest to join WWE, and maybe with Triple H at the helm, he actually might be considering it. I do believe it is all a work from MJF, who has become one of the hottest commodities in professional wrestling. A man that Tony Khan would be stupid not to pay when his contract is up and reward with a world title in his current contract. But I do believe that all parties involved will want this relationship to continue, and why shouldn't they? MJF has a chance at being the universally agreed on best wrestler in the world and be one of the key figures in AEW moving into the future. I could genuinely see him and Hangman Adam Page being the continued faces of the company for the next 10 to 15 years. They could be the AEW equivalent of, let's say, Randy Orton and John Cena, or The Rock and Austin, to a much lesser extent. Do not think I'm comparing them to either of those duos. But if we stick with the Orton and Cena reference, then Wardlow can sort of be like the Batista. I just mean with the yin and the yang of the top division, Hangman is always going to be the face presence, and MJF is always going to be the heel presence, constantly at odds with each other. All this to say that MJF will be a perennial top guy in the company and comfortably a multiple-time world champion. My feelings about MJF have changed very little in the year since my video. I still think his ceiling is by far the highest, and he is so far ahead of second place within these 4 that it's not even funny. If we try and look at it realistically, he is multiple years ahead of the other 3 in terms of development, and he is ready to claim the AEW World title and start the era of MJF. His first 3 to 5 years of being a top guy will be swamped by some of the established guys. There is no denying that. He will have to share the top spot with the likes of Jon Moxley, Bryan Danielson, hopefully Kenny Omega, and CM Punk as well. There's a lot of A1 guys on the roster currently, but once the older wrestlers fall away, MJF, who will be around, let's say, 30 years of age, will have clearer air at the top of the mountain. He is, in my opinion, the gold standard of how a young wrestler can turn himself into a main guy. He is, at the bare bones of it, a guy that can sell you on a match, on a feud, and on his character. He epitomizes the importance of being great on the microphone and how far that can carry you. That's not to say that he is not a great in-ring worker, because he certainly is. But the main thing that separates him from his direct peers in this group is his character and mic ability. It's his X factor that not many other people in the world have. I can't imagine many people that match him on the microphone. There isn't much I can say about MJF that people wouldn't agree on. I think he's universally accepted as a top guy, and if he's not right now, he will be by year's end, which certainly is different from a year ago where people still had their questions. Someone that only sparks questions is the former 3-time TNT champion and the man that holds the most annoying smile in professional wrestling, Sammy Guevara. Sammy is by far the most polarizing of the 4 pillars. I especially saw this in the comment section of my very first video, where people either really loved him or really hated him. And while that makes sense for his character now, back when I made that video, Sammy was meant to be a face who had just dethroned Miro to become the fresh TNT champion. He's played both face and heel before, and truthfully, he never played either that well in my opinion. When he's a face, he's actually really hard to cheer, unless it's bell to bell and he's performing ridiculous stunts, which is why I ended up calling him Showtime Sammy Guevara. When he's a heel, he's generally just uninteresting. In my opinion, the only thing he's had to fall back on is the unwanted romance angle with Ty, but that's so shallow it can't even last a segment before it's stale and boring. What MJF dominates in when it comes to having you invested in character is exactly what Sammy Guevara lacks most of all. I think it's the reason Tony Khan leaves him in stables or groups. And it's not that Sammy Guevara hasn't had a chance to fly solo and show what he's got. It's probably unfair to blame him solely for the absolute debacle and destruction of the TNT title lineage with that hot potatoing of the title between he and Cody Rhodes, which I'm sure we all remember. In many ways, you could label him unlucky to have been the one that was caught in the crossfire of MJF's best friend, the American roller coaster's final volatile moments in the company. And he hasn't really recovered since, let's be honest. I think the way he's being managed right now is actually very beneficial to him long term. He's not really in the spotlight right now, and he's not being forced down people's throats, which I think is a good thing. The character is still the same, but it's just not forced. Not that anyone is missing or clamoring for Sammy Guevara, but absence will make the heart grow fonder, and this time in the background and on the back burner will give he and Tony Khan a chance to replan his future. Nothing will undo what he has already accomplished, which, by the way, is impressive whether you like him or not. Is he a future world champion in AEW? If I had to put my house on it, I would still say yes. How far away is he? That is the million-dollar question. Sammy still has to figure out so much. He's so far from the finished article, it's kind of crazy. It seemed like Tony Khan had found something when he made Sammy TNT champion initially, but whatever that was is now lost. The lightning in a bottle was not contained, and all that momentum and belief is now gone. I know he's won more than Jungle Boy, who up until now has only found success in the tag team division, but for me, Sammy Guevara is plumb last in my current rankings of the 4 pillars. The only man that is close to Sammy Guevara in contention for that last spot, purely on achievements rather than ability or my personal enjoyment, is Jungle Boy Jack Perry. I guess now is the best time to say that for their age, on paper, none of the 4 pillars by any stretch of the imagination have had bad careers. They're all still in the infancy of their development, and to sit here and cast judgment as if this is as good as they will ever get is plain wrong. None of these guys are even 30 years of age, so for the worst of the 4 in my books to be a former 3-time TNT champion says a lot about where these guys are in their careers. And while I don't enjoy Sammy Guevara's work at the moment, I am enjoying Jungle Boy's career path so far. Jungle Boy has taken a vastly different path from the other 3 pillars. While the other 3 have had stablemates or mentors while wrestling in singles competition, Jack Perry has almost exclusively been a tag team wrestler. Yes, he's had his moments in the spotlight as a singles competitor in some pretty major roles, including challenging Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship. However, he's largely found success at the top level in the tag team division with former partner Luchasaurus and under guidance and mentorship of former father figure Christian Cage. And that's probably the only reason I have Jack Perry ahead of Sammy Guevara. The World Tag Team titles are the most prestigious tag team titles in the world, and while it's a completely different and incomparable division to the singles division, Sammy Guevara has not held a world title, only a secondary belt, as much as AEW used to say that it wasn't a secondary belt. His feud with Christian Cage has been derailed a bit through injuries, a common story this year in AEW. However, I'm sure when that's back, it will revitalize a lot of the belief and investment that the crowd has had in Jungle Boy. And although I like him more, Jungle Boy needs as much work as Sammy Guevara does in the character building and mic work departments. So I won't claim he's a more complete wrestler than Sammy, because objectively, he he is not. Where Jungle Boy edges out Sammy Guevara is that he's at the very least somewhat interesting. Not as interesting as he could be, or should be, and I think 2023 will be a massive year for Jungle Boy, as I predicted this year would be, but nonetheless easier to invest time and energy into than Sammy Guevara. The reason that I'm comparing these two so much is because for me, these two are by far the closest of the four pillars right now, and it really is neck and neck between them. With MJF clearly the most developed, one man sits in no man's land right now in the middle of the four pillars ranking. There's a very good argument that you can make that Darby Allin was the first of the four pillars to really break out. His development started a lot sooner than the other three, as he captured his first title almost 2 years ago, while for comparison, MJF was rolling up Chris Jericho to end up joining the Inner Circle. He had a very strong 6-month title reign, faced CM Punk in his return match, and has had some ridiculous moments alongside Sting, but losses to Kyle O'Reilly, Brody King, and even Sammy Guevara in the recent Tournament of Champions, the same Sammy, who Darby has a 2-2 singles record against now, shows just how far from grace Darby has fallen in his pursuit up the mountain. His potential is still extremely high, and behind MJF, he is the closest to world champion material, but currently, Darby Allin is going through a massive revamp phase. Right now, there isn't anything that jumps out to me that Darby needs to improve on. He is evenly spread amongst in-ring work, mic work, character building, vignettes, etc. Right now, he's just in a holding pattern, waiting for the right time to launch. I don't think it's a bad thing either, but it would be a bit more bearable if he was being involved in some interesting but winnable feuds, and not instead losing pay-per-view matches to tag team wrestlers. No apologies to Kyle O'Reilly. Speaking of pay-per-view wins, Darby's last singles match pay-per-view win is still all the way back at Full Gear 2020 when he defeated Cody Rhodes for the TNT title. Yep, that's right, 2 years ago. I'm not here to bash the work he's done with Sting. In fact, the matches those two have had at pay-per-views usually steals the show with regards to big moments and pops. And it is no negative in my mind that Darby Allin is sitting on the back burner and conserving some career momentum while he has Sting as a mentor. Enjoying this phase of his career while he was able to put on matches with Sting is something that I've learned to do, because eventually Sting will have to stop the stunts and he will have to become a 100% true mentor who purely sits on the sideline. Once Darby flies solo again, I believe we will see what we came to expect from Darby in the singles division, but at an elevated level. For full transparency, and as I said in my first video, I'm actually not that huge of a fan of Darby Allin. Granted, he has only ever grown on me since I started watching AEW, but even now, it's not that I miss him in the big spots, but he always gets a good pop, the crowd loves him, he can sell a lot of merchandise, and really, he's future world champion material. So I want to see him developed in the right way. And I believe the biggest thing in getting him back is a singles pay-per-view win this year, and hopefully further development in 2023. But like I said, I will be enjoying those Sting moments for now. That's my breakdown of the four pillars and where they are right now, 1 year after I made my very first video regarding this topic. If you want to go compare my thoughts back then to now, I'm sure some things have changed, but overall I probably feel the same about the four pillars as I did a year ago. My rankings this year are a lot more clear. The only questionable thing is Sammy Guevara versus Jungle Boy. Honestly, you could make a very good argument either way, with really, like I said, the only thing splitting them being the world championship in the tag team division that Jungle Boy has. Some of you might be saying, well, Darby and MJF don't have world titles, so why isn't Jungle Boy ranked above them? For me, Jungle Boy and Sammy Guevara are the closest in terms of development, so I needed a tiebreaker, whereas for me, Darby Allin is clearly a more developed wrestler than Sammy or Jungle Boy, and MJF even a step above. MJF also has, I believe, an undefeated record when it comes to singles matches against the four pillars, and everybody else I think has like mixed records, and I don't remember what pairing it is, but there is a pairing of these four pillars that haven't wrestled. I think it's Jungle Boy versus Sammy Guevara, but I'm not sure off the top of my head. There is a combination, I believe, of the four pillars that haven't wrestled. I could be wrong about that, but looking at their head-to-head records is always fun for me. I like doing it, and I also think while we're talking about head-to-head records, I believe Jungle Boy doesn't have a singles win against any of the four pillars, which again just goes to show how his focus has been the tag team division for now. He's moving into the singles division now. What are your guys' rankings of the four pillars? Leave it in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, do leave a like on it, as it does really help the channel out. And if you've watched this far, just don't lie to me. I know you like the video. You may as well click the button. I hope you guys are happy. I hope you're healthy, and I hope life is treating you well. I'll see you in the next one real soon. Stay stunning, boys.